your wife as yourself, or even when we talk about the responsibility that we have as Christians to love our, excuse me, to love our neighbors as ourselves. You can't love your neighbor if you're not loving yourself well. So let's just jump in and talk about this relationship with ourselves. I know we've all probably heard that we can be our own worst enemy at times. And so this first story that the author talks about is a young lady that has been in therapy for some years and worked through lots of issues. So she's doing really well, which is a good place for her to be. And she encounters a problem. And there's a new issue. And she says, I have tremendous boundary problems with this woman that I know, this woman in my life. And there's a little bit more conversation. And the therapist asked why she never mentioned this woman before. And her answer was, she's me. And I just thought that was so interesting how we can come to realizations and revelations at different points in time that we might be the problem of whatever it is we're facing or going through, so that we may need to do some work within ourselves. So in a little bit lower on the page, and we're in chapter 13, Boundaries in Yourself, page 237, the author notates, he says, how do we begin to set limits on ourselves? Because if you think about that, a lot of people don't realize that everything that you hear or feel or in your mind is not really just you. There are different factions happening within your own mind, so you can control and have things that you have to put limits on. So there are a couple of scriptures I want us to be able to illuminate a little bit. So if somebody can find 1 Thessalonians 4:4, that would be really helpful. And I'll kind of just jump ahead a little bit too. I would like to have, I think it's Proverbs 10 and 19 and Proverbs 17 and 27.
I turned it all the way up. I can't hear.
Good morning, Sister Brother Hunt. So does anybody have 1 Thessalonians 4:4 yet?
I have it.
So the reason I wanted to mention this is because it talks about the fact that there is responsibility for us to control our own minds. And we always want to make sure that everything that we're talking about or looking at, we find reference to in the Bible. We want to really understand where these things are coming from so that we can get grounded in them. So Yvonne, if you could read 1 Thessalonians 4:4, I'd appreciate it.
Yep. From the NIV version, that each of you should learn to control your own body in a way that is holy and honorable.
So even the Bible tells us that we have to find some self-control. There's also, we have some internal boundary conflicts that we have to work through in order for us to be able to find this control and to be able to be honorable in all those ways. So we're moving to page 238, where it talks about all the different ways that you can be out of control. On there, it says the Bible says that healthy, fulfilled, happy people have self-control. Galatians 5 tells us that the fruit of the Spirit, that self-control is a fruit of the Spirit, and we are called to develop it. So it's not necessarily something that just comes to us and that we have naturally. We have to work at developing self-control. And I'm just going to take a quick pause. I see Sister Hunt, you have your hand up.
Sister Hunt, she's on mute. I don't know.
Yeah. And so because
I can't hear her. I don't know if I should go back out and come back in. I've got my phone all the way up to the highest, and then I told Colonel to get his phone. I think he has Teams from work, but I can't hear what's going on. I can hear you guys talk and see your lips, but barely. I've got my volume all the way up. Somebody say something.
Good morning.
Yeah, it's very clear on my end.
Yeah, y'all guys are saying morning. It seems real low, but I've got it. Okay, I'm gonna go out and come back in, see if that changes anything.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
No worries. We want you to be able to participate. Yeah. So again, because we have some time constraints, I just want to jump into those different ways that we can be out of control. And, we don't have to have all of these, but maybe some of them will kind of resonate with you. The first one, they talk about food. And I love to eat. I don't know if any of you all have the same problem, but the reason he talks about the issue with food is because it's one of those things that can become a visible concern or issue for people. And it says, especially if you're overeating for a long period of time or not eating healthy for a long period of time. And he says, what makes overeating especially painful is that the weight is so visible to others. And like others who suffer from out of control behaviors, those who are overweight can sometimes feel overwhelming shame for their behavior, which also serves to drive them further into the relationship back to food. Um, I don't know if anybody has this particular issue or concern, but he talks about a couple of the reasons that we use food, and I do know that I have some family members that have concerns with wanting to avoid intimacy, wanting to avoid just being able to connect with people and have used food in those ways. And then sometimes it brings us closeness. When we're going through things, it's easy to sit down for me with some ice cream and, kind of just forget the things that are happening around us. And so I'm going to go through a couple of these and then ask if anybody wants to share. Some of them are more sensitive than others, so I don't want to necessarily, call anyone out. But the next one I think is a pretty common one as well. Money. God intended money to be a blessing for us and to others, and it says, "Give and it will be given unto you." In Luke 6:38. The Bible says that money is not the problem, but the love of money is a problem, and it is the root of all evil. We talked about last week, our work, and the fact that we go to work for a number of different reasons. And one of those is to make money so that we can provide for our family and take advantage of all the things that we have in the world that require money. But money can become a real problem for people if you're thinking about it, striving for it, using it for the wrong reasons, or doing things that are not positive to get the money. So we have to make sure that we are keeping that in the right focus and understanding what the Bible says about money and the way that we should use it. I'm going to address time, and then we'll go back and see if anyone has any thoughts on the first three that we want to cover. So I don't know if we have any procrastinators out there or people that think about time in a little bit different way than others. There's a statement here about 11th hour people, those that are constantly, riding on the edges of a deadline. So, those are my procrastinator people. And I have been such when I was in college, because there was always a deadline, always something that I needed to get done. But there were other fun things to do instead. So I would have fun and then just wait till the last minute. And unlike some of the things he talks about in the book, the exhilaration or that adrenaline that comes kind of at that last minute, it just seemed that I was a lot more creative and I could get things done. And so waiting to the last minute became more of a habit than anything, just because it seemed a little easier for me to get things done than when I started early and it drug out over a long period of time. So the author does talk about people with, he calls it undeveloped time self-boundaries, which I thought was really nice, a nice way to put that. And then he says they are often left with unrealized desires, half-baked projects, and the realization that tomorrow will begin with running behind schedule all over again. So once I got to the understanding that I was always kind of behind the eight ball, as they say, that's the only thing that kind of brought me out of kind of procrastinating to the last minute. And then there would just be so many things happening at the same time that it became a little bit more taxing than I thought it was worth to continue to procrastinate. But like I said, I do want this to be more interactive and I want people to be able to share. So let's kind of just recap a couple of the things that we've talked about. the fact that boundaries with ourselves is really hard, and one of the things that we really need to focus on so that we can be a better Christians. And then these a couple of the things that we have as areas where we can be out of control. So we've talked about food, money, and time so far. Does anyone want to share anything in any of those areas or anything else?
Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries with food. I don't have good boundaries with food. I love to cook and I love to eat, and I've been stacking on the pounds here like none other, particularly in the last 5 years. So we gotta hopefully maybe someone in this ministry is more disciplined than I, and they can help me out with that.
Well, Carlos, I don't think I'm more disciplined than you. The only thing that I found that is helping me with the packing on the pounds piece is that I run every morning. I know you probably can't see my, I didn't have a change with my little Cypress Running Club t-shirt.
Woohoo!
That's the only thing that has seemed to help. And I think there's, they talk about this thing with age.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mentioned, when things are happening, me and my ice cream or, me and my popcorn, it just seems to make me feel better. And I know that's not probably what I should be doing, but it's easy, right? And so we kind of gravitate to those things that we know are going to work or that don't require a lot of us a lot of the times. And I think that's kind of the gist of this, that sometimes, we have to take a little bit more time and effort and think about how to exercise some self-control. We are human. We are human. So does anybody else want to share on? Oh,
I'll raise my hand and say I also struggle with food and with time. And when you were talking about how you used to always wait till the last minute in college and whatnot, it gave me a flashback all the way to high school.
oh Lord. Okay.
The ultimate, I'm still a chronic procrastinator, even to this day, but I think one of the most vivid examples was when I was in high school. We actually had to, my senior year, I had this class where we had to do a 100-page research paper. And of course, I waited till the last minute to do mine. And we didn't have computers at the time. So, typing out that like on a regular typewriter, typing out this research paper. And I can't remember if my typewriter broke or whatever, but I remember my mother worked at American Express and I had to drive to her office like that evening after everybody else left the office. I was there from like 9 at night to maybe 5 or 6 in the morning.
Oh my God.
Typing out this research paper. Not just me, but one of my girlfriends, Rosalind was with me. Both of us wait till the last minute. So, and that chronic procrastination persists with me even to this day, where I'm always, I don't know. Yeah, it's, I don't know why I do it. Maybe you're right. It's like a bit of the thrill to let it like all build up, but it's something that I've definitely struggled with.
Now, Yvonne, you brought me back to something. I mentioned, I don't know if you all can see this. It's a little whiteout. People don't even use this kind of whiteout anymore.
Right.
But I remember being in the typing class, and you'd have to kind of back up and try to white it out and start. I can't even imagine trying to type 100-page paper at the last minute on a typewriter. I was not that good. I'm still not that good with a computer. Oh, bless you. I can't even imagine. So I just wanted to check to see if anybody else wanted to share before we move ahead to task completion, because this is a kind of in the same vein as the time piece. But what I found to be interesting here is I've moved from the procrastination place to this place sometime of what he calls a poor finisher, because he talks about the fact that, maybe it's not that you're waiting to the last minute like the procrastinator, but you might actually start things. Get a lot of different things going and start with a lot of steam and have a lot of passion around what you're doing. But somewhere along the way, before you get to the finish line, it just kind of goes to nothing. And he says, I thought this was kind of interesting. He says that though they may be great starters, these folks find themselves unable to be good finishers. And this is on page 241, kind of in the middle of the page, that third paragraph. And then he says, success looms, then is suddenly snatched away. I find even in my current work world, I am at developing, ideas and putting things together. I'm a project manager to some degree, and I'll put the whole timeline together of everything that needs to happen, all the pieces and parts, and have it mapped out beautifully. And there are all these accolades for it. And as I'm managing the project, somewhere along the way, I just lose the fervor for it, the passion, I guess because I like the putting it all together piece and designing it, and then the actual implementation or execution, not so excited about that. But he also talks about the fact that there are a number of different ways or reasons why people may be poor finishers. So we don't have time to look through that entire list, but he talks about, resistance to structure, fear of success, which I think is a really real one, lack of follow through. And then when he gets to number 4, the distractibility, that's where I kind of found myself. I have, ADHD and pretty strong, and to the extent that I have some medication I could take every now and then for it. But I mean, an inability to delay gratification. I think these are all things that we need to just kind of take a little bit of a look at to see if, for whatever reason, poor finisher is something that you may find yourself being categorized as. And then to kind of round it out, he talks about those with task completion problems, like me, often feel like 2-year-olds in their favorite play areas. We'll bang and hammer for a bit. We'll vroom around with a toy car. We'll talk, like a puppet, pick up a book or do all these different things. And then we just fizzle out. So that's actually one that I have to kind of go back and look at a bit more and try to understand how I can be more consistent and or make sure that when I am in different areas that I surround myself with people that kind of like the execution or implementation part so that nothing gets left kind of hanging. That's another solution to some of this, right? Make sure that you kind of surround yourself with people that not enable you, but that can support where you're not, maybe the strongest. Now, this next one, I don't know if it will be as challenging to anyone else as it was to me, but our words. Reading through this about how our words have impact was really challenging for me because I withhold words a lot until I'm really steamed, and then you're going to get all of them. And so reading through this, I'm going to take a little bit more time here because I do think that there is a lot of things for us to glean from and to learn from, and maybe even modify our way of being. And so in the middle of the page on 242, under words, he talks about talking net rather than gross, means putting a net boundary on how many words we use and how we use them. And that can be a struggle for many. How we use language can deeply affect the quality of our relationships. The words we use can be both a source of blessing and a curse. And I think we've all seen and read that in the Bible. But then he says they can be a blessing when we use them to empathize, identify, encourage, confront, and exhort others. And they can be a curse when we do all these other things that he lists, like making sarcastic remarks or approval through flattery, giving the silent treatment. And then he talks about manipulation and some other things. So this is where I had asked if someone could have Proverbs 10 and 19 and Proverbs 17 and 27 ready, because I really do think it's worth us spending the time to look at what the Bible has to say about this. He kind of summarizes it, but I do want us to read the words out of the word, understand exactly the instruction. So, Verlin, I see that you've come off mute. Did you have one of those scriptures for us?
Yes, 10 and 19.
Yes, please.
Sin is not ended by multiplying words, but the prudent hold their tongues. And that's from the NIV.
So when we talk about, he mentioned talking net versus gross. That is exactly what the Bible was just mentioning. Using a lot of words is not necessarily a good thing. Sometimes it's just about sharing um, kind of the minimum that you need to share to get your point across, and then maybe praying on that. Whatever you really needed that person to take away from the conversation you were having, it's not about you elaborating or going on and on to kind of hammer the point home, but making sure that they know you have a concern, you have something that you want to express, and that you're open to having a conversation, but relying on the Holy Spirit to kind of really then share what truly needs to be shared with that person. Does someone have Proverbs 17 and 27?
I have that as well.
Okay, thank you,
Uh,
Lisa.
huh. He that hath knowledge spareth his words, and a man of understanding is of an excellent spirit.
Someone that knows better won't use as many words. That's what I take away from that. And that they know how to express themselves without having to be verbose, right? It's not about how many words we can use. It's about making sure that we're expressing the thing that needs to be expressed and then leaving it. Um, does anybody have any thing they want to share or elaborate on that?
This is Brother Hunt.
Good
Them
morning.
doggone words, boy. I tell you. Yeah. I wanna say it in this sense of we had a meeting at work. It was about a month ago, and it was about team building. And so HR was also there, as well as my group, and they asked people, "Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? What do you think about team building and how we can do better?" Of course, no one wanted to say anything, so I said something. I just spoke out, say, "Hey, we need to have each other's back because this is a team effort. We can get a lot done, and so on and so forth." So after I got through, one of my coworkers said, "Oh, that's all good, and you're preaching and blah blah blah," but the person also said that you need to practice what you preach. And I'm like, and it kind of threw me. I'm like, is she calling me out in front of everybody?
Because you don't talk.
And it was more of encouragement. It was more team building, uplifting, and stuff like that. And so for some reason, this person took it personal. And I really wanted to go off. I really did, because I felt like, well, no, I'm not going to say I felt like. I knew that this person was calling me out in front of, to me, guests. Not only the department, but the guest, which is HR. And I wanted to just shut this person up. And I said to myself, no, I'm not going to do that, because I want to be the bigger person. And so the words that she said, really, it affected me in a manner that I just thought it was very disrespectful. Now, like I said, I could have been disrespectful as well and go back and say, okay, I'm gonna get one up on you. But I'm like, no, I want to do the right thing. I'm a Christian, and yes, it's tough. Yes, it's challenging, but I want to be the better person. So I'm just wanted to share that with y'all.
I do thank you for sharing that, because it kind of helps us wrap up this part on words. And I do want, again, I think this is really important for us. So I just want to read a little bit more and wrap up the words part. On 243, he says, we have the power to set boundaries on what comes out of our mouths. I know you probably all intellectually know that, but doing it is a little bit harder. And so we have to think about it and practice it. And here's why, because it says, but we are responsible for all the words that come out of our mouths. Our words do not come from somewhere outside of us, as if we were ventriloquist dummies. They are a product of our hearts. So we have to do the heart work first. But then he also goes on to say that we need to take responsibility for our words. And the Bible says, but I tell you that everyone will have to give account on the day of judgment for every empty word they have spoken. And that was one of the scriptures that I wanted to elaborate on and spend a little time, because, sometimes we're just talking and not even thinking about it. And we know our words have the power to create. And so sometimes you're just kind of randomly chit-chatting with, a girlfriend or somebody at work, and the things that you're saying have power. So again, we have to just make sure that we aren't being callous or frivolous with our words, because they are important and we will have to give account for them at the end. So again, moving forward, we talked about how hard sometimes it is for us to put boundaries in place with ourselves. So the author moves on and talks about, why doesn't my no work with me? And he said, what is the problem? Why doesn't our no work with us? And he gives a couple of reasons for that. One I mentioned earlier, we are our own worst enemies. An external problem is often easier to resolve than an internal problem. Because for us to resolve an internal problem, we have to admit that we have a problem, that there is something we need to do, and then do the hard work of changing it. He also talks about isolation, which, within the last couple of years with COVID and a number of things, and just naturally, a lot of us have practiced isolation, which is not good for any of us, because that's when the enemy has a lot more access to you, and you hear things and you believe them, because you're not kind of in community with other Christian believers and kind of talking through those things or getting good counsel. And the third one he talks about is willpower. The fact that we sometimes just believe if we just say we're not going to do it or don't want to do it, then it changes. It's not so easy. And so he talks about that a bit on page 247, where he gives an example around how he says God told Moses to encourage and strengthen Joshua. He didn't tell Moses to tell Joshua just to say no. Sometimes just saying no is not going to be all we need to do. We need to have community around us. We have these boundaries in place. And we also may need to kind of seek some assistance and help. So as he mentions, establishing boundaries with ourselves is about God desiring maturity and self-control for us, even when we do ourselves sometimes. And so he gives us a number of different ways that we can start to kind of rein in out of control behavior, so that we can start to develop that self-control that the Bible requires of us. And he does talks about those things later in the chapter. The last thing I want to talk about in this chapter on boundaries in yourself is the fact that when we don't have deep relationships, it is much harder for us. And he also being so isolated. And that is, again, on page 251. So if that is an issue or problem that you may find yourself in, where you don't have a community, I think we all have one here. And so I don't know that that would be particularly our issue, but there are some things that he says, will help address your need, and allowing yourself to fail, reaching out to others, and welcoming consequences as your teacher. So the last thing he says is to surround yourself with people who are loving and supporting. And that's one of the things I find in this group we have on this school. So if you ever find yourself in need of someone to talk to, or that you may be feeling a bit isolated in an area of your life, I think it's appropriate for me to say that I think you can reach out to the people on this line, if no one else. So and he ends with the good news is this: your boundaries with yourself can be restored and strengthened. It just takes a bit of work. And so with that, we'll hop over to boundaries and God. And we have just under 8 minutes to kind of move through this, and it's really important. So I do want to kind of just jump in really quickly, because we talked a bit about last week that God is a relational God. And in this second paragraph, the author says the Bible is a living book about relationship to God, of God to people, people to God, and people to each other. It is about a God who created this world, placed people in it, related to the people, lost that relationship, and continues to heal that relationship. So then he kind of moves into kind of the scriptural foundation for this relationship piece. And it's about when the lawyer asked Jesus for the greatest commandment. So we're on chapter 14 on page 249. And of course, I think, we've all heard this. It says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. That's the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it: love your neighbor as yourself. And we talked a little bit about that at the beginning, but loving God and your neighbor, those things are both difficult, because sometimes we are really selfish and aren't necessarily looking outside of ourselves. And that's one of the reasons it's so difficult for us to develop these boundaries. These boundaries are essentially a responsibility, needing to know who's responsible for what, where we end and someone else begins, where God ends and where we begin. But the blessing for us is that the Bible clarifies all of those boundaries. And so whatever we don't get to in this lesson today, you can go back and kind of read the chapter again, or kind of find those scriptures in the Bible, maybe meditate on them and really understand what it is that God wants us to understand about these boundaries. And so the author first talks about God respecting boundaries, period. And the first is that he leaves work for us to do so that we can develop those boundaries for ourselves and understand how they work, because all of that is great information for us. And it says he allows us to experience painful consequences for our behavior so that we'll change. He wants us to change for our own good and for his glory. He does not rescue us out of every situation, because he wants us to work it out for our own good. So that's one of the primary reasons for us establishing these boundaries, and for God just being able to say, boundaries are a good thing and you need to work on them. But then he also respects our no. If we're just not going to do the right thing and we say, hey, we don't want to do X, Y, or Z, God will respect that and back up and let you kind of go through whatever it is that you're wanting to do. And of course, we all know the story of the prodigal son. And so he talks a bit about that and how that kind of plays out. And it says, until we can own our own boundaries with God, we can never change or allow God to work with those boundaries. We need to be honest about owning, exposing, and those boundaries being made a part of us. Then we and God can face the problem. So that's where any kind of change that we're trying to have, or that we know needs to exist, it's about establishing those boundaries, opening yourself up to the fact that they need to be there, and allowing God to do that work in you. And he also talks about the fact that it's okay if you happen to be upset or angry with God, to express that, because God wants an honest relationship with us. And he talks about the fact that until you're able to feel that anger, you're not going to be able to feel, the love and protection and those other feelings that come after you've kind of realized and expressed that anger. I don't want to get too deep into that because there are a lot of different reasons that, people could be angry with God. And but there's also, outside of anger, there can be fear. And he says we are often fear being honest because it's not safe to express our honest feelings in our earthly relationships. But our relationship with God should be different, right? Because God is that all-knowing being that knows everything about us, whether we want him to or not, and that understands everything that is going on within us because he made us. He knitted us together, every single thing that is within you. So it says God desires truth in our innermost being. He is seeking people with whom he can have a real relationship. He wants to hear it all, no matter how bad it seems. And when we own that what is within our boundaries, we can bring it to the light and God can transform us with his love. I think that's ultimately the goal, right? For us to be continually transformed into the image of Christ. That's what we as Christians are supposed to be striving for and what our ultimate goal is. I have just a couple more minutes, so I'll illuminate a couple more things for you to kind of think about. And it says, we talked about God respecting boundaries, but we also have to respect God's boundaries. And God has been very clear as to what his boundaries are. And it talks about, the fact that God is free from us. And when he does something for us, he does it out of choice. So God, it says Jesus acted through his suffering. In the Garden of Gethsemane, he asked for his cup of suffering to pass from him. God said no. Jesus accepted God's wishes, submitted to them, and through that became the source of eternal salvation for all that obey him. If Jesus had not respected God's boundaries and God's no, we would all be lost. So we have to just know that when God has a no, there's a reason for it, and there's a blessing on the other end of it. So respecting God's boundaries is something that we all need to do. The author also gives a little bit of opening there that in this relationship we have with God, we talked about we need to be honest. And sometimes we don't agree with God's no. And it's okay for us to respectfully disagree and to say, even to try to persuade God when we really think that there's a case for it. Because again, the author gives some examples of different people in the Bible that were able to plead with God and get him to change his mind. So I just wanted to kind of give a bit of the full relationship we should have with God, is that we respect his boundaries, he respects ours. And then there still is this relationship of conversation and honesty that we should always have. It's a real relationship, just like we have with people. And the last thing I'm going to say, I know we're like right at time, is that if we're trying to do, and I'm reading from the last page of the book, it says if we're trying to do God's work for him, we will fail. If we're wishing to do for him, excuse me, if we're wishing for him to do our work for us, he will refuse. But if we do our own work and God does his, we'll find strength in a real relationship with our Creator. I'm going to finish there because I think that's what we all want. It may be tough for us at times to admit it or to do the things we need to do to make it happen. But hopefully in these two chapters, we've kind of gotten a number of things about how to develop self-control for us within our own selves, and then more about the relationship we have with God and why those boundaries need to be there. So Carlos, I'll hand it back over to you or to Yvonne and see if you want to open it up for people to speak or if we need to move on to our next agenda item. Thank you.
Fantastic. Bravo. What a wonderful lesson. What a wonderful ministry. You're truly gifted, Tamara. Thank you so much. And what we will do, we will move forward. And if there are any questions this time, just because we have this business meeting pressing up against the teaching today, we'll invite you to ask your questions or make your comments either in the notes or via text or the myriad of ways that we have to communicate with each other. But before we move to the business meeting, if there's any encouragement, any applause, any gifts that we want to give to our sister Tamara, we're welcome to do that.
Yes.
Bravo, bravo, bravo.
Bravo. Yes. Very
Sister
good.
Tamara, thank you for touching our spirit, touching our heart with this lesson
Thank you.
on boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
It really helped me. The word it helps me all the time. It can come from anybody, anywhere, but the word just helps. It soothes. It teaches. It guides. It lends an ear. It encourages. And so we just so thankful for you, Tamara, for this lesson. Bravo.
Yes, I just want to
Amen.
say, add to it, Sister Hunt. I was trying to do coffee and have a pen in one hand and hard to drink coffee with the left hand when you right-handed. And I said, oh, she's saying some good stuff, Carmel. I had to write down some notes. So I appreciate you, sister. Keep us all in
Thank you.
prayer. And we got you in prayer. Awesome, awesome. We're going to be hearing from
Yes.
you some more. Amen.
That's right. That's right. And I just want to thank you, Tamara, for your faithfulness and for your commitment to teaching 2 weeks in a row. I know, especially these past 2 weeks have been very tough on you personally, but you were able to persevere and push through and bless us with the word and uplift our spirits. So I just want to let you know that we appreciate you and we are continuing to hold you up in prayer and just wish the best for you. And thank you so much. I enjoyed the lesson.
Bless you. And you have some more comments for your edification in the chat too, my dear sister. All right, let's
Thank
move
you.
forward, y'all. We're going to move forward. Take off keep on whatever hat you had on this morning. Keep that blessings and learning and teaching hat on. And now we're just going to add a business hat. We're starting something new, everyone. We talked about it last week, and now we're walking the talk. So what we want to begin to do is at the end of every month, we want to have a business meeting, a board meeting. And everyone here is a member. And we're going to discuss today about those who want to be, official board members. This is a legal entity, so there's some official governance that we must have. So we're going to have to talk about board members, and we're going to have to talk about the roles and responsibilities. All right, without any further ado, let's get into it, dear people. Can you see this Word document?
Yes.
July
Yes.
31st.
Yes.
All right.
I did.
All right, bless you. Okay, so this is going to be this is going to be actually our second board meeting. We had to have one to establish ourselves and to establish our bank account. So this is going to actually be our second one. This is representative of our call to order. So said, so done for the first one, call to order. Roll call. I'll just use, Yvonne, can you just make sure you tabulate everyone that's on
Yep.
today? That'll save us a little time instead of doing a roll call verbally. And then the next item 3 is approval of the minutes. That I didn't tee up. Here you go. Here you go. All right, and hit the high points of the first official meeting. So Yvonne and I, for the first official meeting, and up until now, we've just worn every hat necessary for this organization because we had to establish Lighthouse Marriage Ministries as a legal business entity, and we had to establish a bank account. So because of that reason, we had this meeting. Yvonne acted as the CEO, and the location is there for your perusal, which is our address. Had the roll call and approval of minutes. And as we said before, the main matters was establishment of the ministry and establishment of a banking account for said ministry. And So said, so done on both of those accounts. PNC is our bank. We were waffling between Chase or PNC. We ended up going with PNC because Chase kind of faltered. Unfinished business at that time. We were looking forward to our bridge ministry, and we did have it. Bless you all. And then the new business was to recruit more teachers for the Boundary Series. At that time, we established that the next meeting would be held on July, not 30th, but 31st, which is what we're doing today. And that particular meeting was adjourned on 2:30, and then prayer was given and signatures were made below. So that was the official first meeting. Any comments on that as I move to this particular meeting again? All right. All right, let me move to the order of business for this meeting. So for this meeting, what I want to do is describe and solicit and plead and ask you to become board members. But before I have the ask, I thought it'd be decent and in order to tell you what am I asking? What are the roles and responsibilities? So we have, in effect, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 7 different roles. First role is a member. Every member is a board member, meaning that you're endowed by God for leadership, encouragement, admonishment, and the direction of his people. This is not Carlos speak. This is Bible, y'all. Everyone is a member. You're believers, you're a member. Second role is that of teacher. So every member is a board member because this is a member-led organization. Every board member should be apt to teach. I use that word should be. We believe in the Great Commission, and the Great Commission says to go and teach and baptize and love. We've taught and we understand that this is a commission for all. So we all should be apt to teach. This is after all our commission from God. So the second role is that of teacher. Highlighted both of those because those are non-negotiables. I mean, this is who we are and what we've been commissioned to be. Now we get into some of the more legal because we're organized federally and by the great state of Texas. First role, senior director. So everybody that teaches can be a director. For the sake of order, this leader must be vetted. I'm in the Bible again. Vetted and tested over time to be vigilant, honorable, steeped in biblical doctrine, patient, and a leader in their own home. How can you be a leader of others if you're not even a leader in your own home? Senior director is more of a servant than any other, more of a servant than a director, officers, teachers, and members, because we know that our beloved Jesus Christ established a new order of things. We're not under this hierarchical plan that the world sets up, but we are of a plan that Jesus set up where he literally washed the disciples' feet. So the leaders, the first shall be last and the last shall be first. And so in that wise, the senior director is more of a servant than all. Director, likewise, same wording there, except for the part where it says the director is more of a servant than officers, teachers, and members. Then. Next role, recording secretary. Every teacher can be a recording secretary. They are gifted by God with this gift of administration. God bless you. Organized, timely, and decisive in giving an account of God's business with ease. Why is it with ease? Because it's their gift. Next role, financial secretary. Every teacher can be a financial secretary. You see a theme here. The theme is that got to be a teacher first. Can't expect to be leader in the organization, in this organization, or as far as I'm concerned, it should be any organization that holds itself out as a Christian organization. You should be first apt to teach. So that's how we're running this one. Financial secretary. I continue. Every teacher can be a financial secretary. That means that you're not a lover of filthy lucre. I heard my teacher this morning. Tamara, you did a great job of that. It's not about the love of money. Rather, it's about being a trustworthy accountant, a prodigious director of God's talents for the betterment of his kingdom causes. Again, there, great Bible scholars that you are, that word talents there, I'm talking about emotional and skill-wise talents, but I'm also talking about the parable of the talents, someone that's apt to use God's money and bring it back manyfold. And that's the parable of the talents. Seventh role, that of parliamentarian. Every teacher can be a parliamentarian. This person is about God's business and his love of things being done decent and in order and in a timely fashion. This role requires that that person be unswerving in their patient ability to maintain decorum. With that said, I would like you to prayerfully, you don't have to do it today. I'm just putting it on you. I understand that. But before next meeting, I'd like you to alert alert us to what roles that you would like to participate in. I would say this for the sake of order and for the sake of time, and not certainly not out of any ego at all. But I'm just gonna go ahead and sketch in, unless someone has reason for me not to do it, and we'll discuss it. As far as senior director and director, just starting out, I think. Well, it's not I think. I know. What I'm going to do is put my name in as the senior director and put Yvonne's name in as the director. And then that opens up recording secretary, financial secretary, parliamentarian for everyone else. Like I said before, heretofore, Yvonne and I have just been wearing every hat. This is not biblical. As you know, going back to Moses, his direction from his father-in-law, you can't keep running things like that. We got to delegate. So this is us delegating. Be prayerful. Think about the roles and responsibilities we've laid out here and alert us in the coming weeks before the next meeting of which role you would like to be considered for. And then we'll talk about it in the next meeting and appoint it in the next meeting. All right, been talking a lot. Any comments, any discussion so far?
Good morning. I was gonna say, I'm gonna pray on thinking about the secretary, recording secretary position.
Yay, Vaughn.
Yay! Yay!
I think I could do that one. I don't want to do financial. Let my brain cool off. Maybe I'll move to that, but I wouldn't mind being a recording secretary, and we'll pray on that together.
Bless
Amen.
you. Bless you, Vaughn. What else? What else? Does anyone else have any other comments or questions?
Carlos, this is Tamara, and it's more just to understand kind of the structure. Because and I know this is not probably a typical nonprofit organization, but just kind of thinking about the structures that I've seen and known in the past, where there are multiple directors or people kind of in different positions, so that there are
Oh man, Tamara, you dropped out.
We can't hear you, Tamara.
Technology.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yep, there you
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I don't know if that means what I was saying is out of order.
go. No, I didn't mute you.
No, something happened with my connection, and
Oh,
so that's
okay.
why I started thinking was that some kind of sign that. But all I was just saying is that sometimes it's good to have multiple people in roles like multiple directors or whatever, so that again the work doesn't all fall to one person.
Right.
Just a thought, or something to consider maybe in the future.
Absolutely. We'll talk about all of that. Yep, I know that other organizations. So first things first. Yes, you're right. This is not going to be set up like most nonprofits. I did study multiple nonprofits. I am in nonprofits. Really, this is a teaching organization. And so everything kind of flows from that. And really, it's teachers reign supreme in this organization. So to that end, when you talk about multiple directors, it's somebody's more like multiple teachers. And then whatever's needed to support our teachers, then we give them the support. The only reason, and look, Tamara, I actually wanted, like, I wasn't even going to have the term director in anywhere in our bylaws or anything, but it has to legally, you have to have these terms, or banks don't recognize you and things like that. So,
Right.
yeah,
It's just a suggestion, because you mentioned kind of getting started, and there's wearing the multiple hats.
yeah. So my vision and my vision is you have multiple teachers, and those teachers have their own subcommittees, and it kind of they are the per se multiple directors. You feel me? So in other words, every time you see teacher, think director. Dang it, Tamara dropped out again. All right. All right, so then the next meeting we're going to deal with this discussion, the discussion that Tamara's having. Okay, what are going to be the committees? What is going to be the organizational structure? And then how are those committees going to report out? What is this teacher as director structure? Because all this is new. So we're going to deal with that in the next meeting. Immediate new business. We got our bridge ministry next Sunday. And then Yvonne, you're going to,
You should be receiving a link to the Sign Up Genius either hopefully later on this evening. I'll have it all set up and sent out to you all. And same deal, we'll meet same time, same place, 8:00 next Sunday at our usual spot. So stay tuned for that. All are welcome. And actually, we were talking about it with our sons the other day, and Jared suggested that it might be good to find a different location that we can minister to. So we will look at those options as well to see if there's another tent community in close proximity that we could also start to reach out to.
bless you, sweet wifey. We'll talk about future business the next meeting. And then we have our closing protocols. And I just wanted to show you, so when I'll type this thing up, and then it's going to go out. It's going to go out on Adobe Sign Signature. Right now we don't have all these roles established, but I wanted you to at least see how we're going to go about approving these minutes so that everybody sees the minutes and approves them, so that by the time we come to the next meeting, we don't have to do that thing. Does everybody approve the minutes? All that stuff. It ought to be automated, and you've already signed and looked at it. As far as I did want to at least show you, like I promised I would, the ins and outs of the money. Pretty easy. We got a donation from me and Yvonne to kick this thing off. $100 deposit into the bank. Then our beloved Sister Tanya and Reverend Smith donated 100. Thank you so much. God bless you all for that. God bless you. Sister Vaughn, Sonia. I didn't know your middle name was Sonia. Sister Vaughn donated $50. God bless you for that. Then you see some, this is just establishment, right? You know how you're just establishing a bank account. This had nothing to do with me. 70 cents and 13 cents, and then they took back out 83 cents. This was just so that I could establish my personal bank to be able to transfer into this account. That's all that is. Just in and out there. And then we donated $1,500 again, that being Yvonne and I. So that brings our balance to $1,750. We haven't had any disbursements since our establishment of this bank account, but we will be having some because of this bridge ministry coming up. And that is your ins and outs. And that, my dears, my dear fellows and dear ma'ams, that is your meeting for today. Any questions or comments?
Yes, it's Sister
Everything.
Brown.
Oh, go ahead, Sister Brown. Oh, wait a minute. Go ahead, Sister Brown first, and then.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for the lesson, Sister Tamara. I really enjoyed it and got a lot out of it. And with the meeting, I just wanted to ask, how can you be a blessing and donate into the ministry?
God
Like
bless you,
what is
sis.
information?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, I should have put up. So you can Zelle. If you have Zelle, I'll give you our Zelle. I'll put it out on the group me. But that's one way. That's probably the easiest way, sis. Um, or you can go into you can certainly go into a PNC bank and write a check and have them deposit into Lighthouse Marriage Ministries. PNC banks are all over. That's why we went with PNC. So there's a couple ways. I just think about like the easiest way to make it easy as possible. So Zelle and actually going to a bank with a check or cash. Is that good, sis?
Oh, yes. And just, you say mention the Lighthouse Ministry, or what did you
Yeah,
say mention?
if you go into the bank, just tell them you want to make a deposit to Lighthouse Marriage Ministries, and they'll certainly take an account on our behalf. They'll take a deposit on our behalf.
Okay.
Is there a
Thank you.
number, like a last 4 digits or something that they need? Like what if there's multiple lighthouses in the
That's a good
Houston
point.
area?
All right, to that point, do y'all see it on here somewhere? Here's the bank account. Might be sitting there right in my face somewhere. Shoot.
You gotta see.
There you go. 4683. Last 4683. Queenie, you got it right. Oh no, Queenie, you got it right in front of you under the monitor.
Oh yeah, you're right.
4683, y'all. You got that, Sister Brown?
Yes, I got it. Thank you.
Bless you for a giving heart. All right. Any other questions?
But in order to Zelle, because I don't have Zelle, or I've never used Zelle myself. In order to Zelle, do they need the full banking account number?
No, that's the beauty of Zelle. No, Zelle is just, I gotta give my I can't remember. I would tell you now, I can't remember if I set it up with my phone number or with my email, but all you need is an email or a phone number for the Zelle part.
Okay.
Yeah, makes it real easy.
Cool.
All right. Thank you, Sister Brown. Thank you, Vaughn. Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, Tamara. Any other questions, comments? So said, so done. Yvonne, you close us out in prayer.
Yes.
Thank you.
We bow our heads. O Lord, our Lord, how excellent is thy name in all the earth, who has set thy glories above the heavens. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you and we praise you for being the mighty God that you are. And we thank you for this marriage ministry. We thank you for every home that's represented, and we ask that you will bless all of our members.